Hello, it's Shelley F Knight, bringing you Positive Changes, a Self-Kick podcast. So today on the show we have Brian Waters, and he's a licensed funeral director and an embalmer, and he's practicing in the state of Indiana of the USA, but he's also a co-creator and host of his own podcast called Undertaking, the podcast. So welcome, Brian.
Oh, Shelley, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I've been so looking forward to this. I truly have. Like when you reached out to me, I was just like, this is going to be so different. This is my kind of world. So Thank you.
I'm an open book. Absolutely. I'll it'll be fun.
I think it will. So please do share your one inspiring story of your positive change in your life.
I tell you, it all started in the United States, Labor Day of 2018, and Labor Day weekend was pretty much a terrible weekend for my family. On the Sunday before the holiday, Monday, my daughter was bit by her dog, and my wife wasn't home. So, that caused all kind of stress. There's a doctor visit to the ER, several stitches right by her eye. So terrible terrible parent failure moment. And so if I wasn't feeling bad enough, the following Tuesday after that holiday on Monday, we were scheduled for an ultrasound. And as a funeral director, my time is never my own. It's always there to be taken or used by somebody else within work and those in need. And that's fine. That's what I signed up for. So I had missed, so my wife and I were expecting, and I had missed all of the ultrasounds, all the appointments, everything. And I was excited because this is the one I get to go to. And we go to the hospital, we're getting an ultrasound, and I'm a big dumb guy. Sometimes things don't register right away. Well, the ultrasound was on my wife's belly, and I'm staring at the screen, and I see a baby, and of course I'm an excited dad. This would be child number 2. And you didn't hear that, that you were expecting, and it didn't register until the nurse kind of looked at my wife and said, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry." And in an instant, in a minute, we were thrust into a situation that I deal with every day, but from the other side. And now I'm walking the path that so many of my families have walked, and I've got a death in my family, an unborn baby. And I didn't even know what to do. I mean, I couldn't speak basically for most of the day. And I suppose my story is really about a grief journey, and I suppose learning that grief can be awful sneaky. So right at the same time in 2018, that September, we were launching Undertaking, the podcast, and I was able to dive into something and completely distract myself. So I didn't go through, and there is no really normal grief, or there's no normal grief journey, but it hit me hard at the beginning for, several days. We had a procedure because, baby was still in utero, and we didn't have the options of doing services. We just didn't have the options of really knowing the gender. I mean, even though we were pretty well along the way, 20 weeks or so. And long story short there, what I chose to do was plant a tree in our yard. And that's what we did. But I was able to, I suppose, distract myself for several months. And then in 2019, as the first couple months come in, I started noticing that I'm not right. Like, I noticed that I was overwhelmingly sad, and I do have to say I do enjoy a good pint. And I found a good pint or two would really bring those emotions to the front. And I'm sitting there thinking, something's wrong. This is not right. I don't feel normal. I'm not motivated to do, frankly, anything. And I'm like, this is wrong. And so I started reaching out to friends and some, some people in the community that I trusted, and started asking questions and say, what is going on with me? And I had people tell me that, from one side of the spectrum, that I've got a really bad problem because, it all kind of tied into having a pint, to the other side of the spectrum saying, oh, everything's fine, just carry on, no problems here. But I think it was really talking with people and really searching out information that I didn't know that I needed and didn't know. I don't, it's really even hard for me to put, but the biggest piece of advice that I had was given to me by a local minister. And he said that when he joined the ministry 30 some years ago, he was given the advice to seek counseling or therapy as a preventative measure, because his field of work is going to be so difficult, dealing with spirituality and life and death, same as a funeral director does in a way. And he said for 30 years, every month he has gone and he's spoke to somebody. Well, as a man and in America, that's almost an admission of defeat to do that. Well, I took that advice, and it was absolutely most amazing positive change for me. I mean, it's so overwhelming and hard to explain that just sitting down and taking an hour a week and focusing on yourself is not something I was used to doing. It,
No.
it was just, I suppose, something in my life to where I just put myself aside and carried on, completing task after task after task and doing very little work on myself. And that little piece of advice, and I think reaching out to others and kind of polling the group, it was positive. And then I found that positive in that information, in the advice that I was given, and I found what worked for me. And it was really sharing with others, but that self introspection really started to help me turn that grief corner.
Bless you. So, as you say, you deal with grief and loss and death in the family all the time. But when it actually came to you, you couldn't apply it to your own grief journey.
Yeah, in a way, that's right. Again, because I was able to distract myself, and there was a saying in one funeral director television show on HBO years ago that funeral directors are really brilliant at putting their own feelings in a box and burying them, and kind of a way that held true to me, and I didn't really notice it at the time. Uh, as funeral service, as funeral directors and embalmers, we're able to kind of compartmentalize what we're doing versus the emotional toll that it has on the people that we're working with. Because if we walk the exact same path with every family, we're going to be a train wreck. So we're able to compartmentalize it. But then when you compartmentalize it in your personal life, you're just, uh, grief is a sneaky thing, and it's going to come out one way or the other. And I think my coping mechanisms for my job really probably delayed my, I don't know, the actualization of what really happened.
So after, like, you had the baby loss, you obviously go back to work, did you?
Yeah. My wife just told me the other day that I was back at work the next day, which I didn't think that I
Wow.
was. I didn't think that I was. Um, that week is kind of foggy because I know we found out on a Tuesday. We had a procedure Friday, and I know I took Tuesday off. Like I said, because I was not, words and me were not getting along until late that Tuesday evening. But apparently, I went to work Wednesday and maybe Thursday. Um, yeah, it's still such a blur.
Yeah. But you see, as a wife, we remember these dates and things like that. So she's probably right.
Right.
So how is it after? Like, you return back into a job that deals with death and you're kind of in this numb stage of grief. How is life then? Does it, every time you deal with it, does it come back up for you, or?
No, it really doesn't, but it did bring to the forefront for me, um, going through that, that process and understanding what it was like for me, even though it will be different for others. I had a better understanding of what the person sitting across the table from me is going through. And I think it helped me communicate and relate with them that, um, you're not going to know how you feel. And even I don't know how they feel, but there's some sort of connection, even unspoken, that we can build on when I'm trying to help them through this process.
Bless you. So tell us, what is it like being a funeral director? I can't imagine. I mean, I've had grandparents die and we've had to go to funeral directors, but what is it? I mean, what is your average day? I have no idea.
Yeah, so for me, I'm in a small rural community. So my community is maybe 1,800 people in the town, um, probably 100,000 in the greater community. But it's a small, slow-paced day where I'm at. I'm not having deaths come in every week, although some weeks I may have 5 or 6 deaths. I may
Oh,
go
wow.
I may go weeks at a time without any. So I wear multiple hats in my role. I'm not only the funeral director and the embalmer, I am the chief bottle washer and car washer and lawn mower. I do everything within this funeral home. The graphic designer, all the secretarial work. I do all of that. So I find myself getting pulled in multiple directions. But it's nice being in a small town community. You know your people. You know, we've always said that in a small town community, you bury your friends, everyone else goes somewhere else. And to a point, that's pretty true. I mean, the deaths in the world of funeral service, they are a little bit more personal because I know their names, I know their families, I know their kids. Where in a big metropolitan area, you may have zero connection to a family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my daily life could be something like today where I'm getting caught up on office work and paperwork and phone calls, doing a little podcast work, where a busy day could be where I'm, bringing a deceased into our care. We're doing the preparation, we're meeting the family, and then completing all those tasks that go along with their requests.
I think that's fabulous. It's just, I was thinking as you was talking, I was like, that's kind of beautiful that you know everyone. But then that also makes it hard, surely, because you think, oh God, it's so and so's mum who I went to school with, and it's, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah, it's
yeah,
kind of beautiful for the family, maybe.
yeah. This is the only way that I've ever known it. I've not worked in a large metropolitan area, and I prefer it this way. I think when families and the dead become a number and an assembly line, then I'm out. I'll go sell cars. Um, so as long as I have the freedom to do what the family wants and what I think can help, then I think I'm in the right spot.
Bless you. And what do you observe, like when other people are going through loss? What do you notice most about the grief journey?
Um, Honestly, it's all across the board. We have some folks that you know some of their grief is anticipated. I suppose we call that anticipatory grief. They've been grieving their loved one as they've been dying over several years, and we have other folks who are in that same process but completely deny the fact they're going to be dying, and then they die, and then they're completely surprised, although they may have been terminal for many, many months or years. um, One of the hardest things that I see as a funeral director, because I sit at a table and I talk with the family that's left behind on what is to be done now. We have a job to do as funeral directors, and that's to get the dead to where they need to go. And that's either the grave, the fire, or whatever oblivion we choose for them. Um, and I think by getting the dead to where they get to go, we get to the living to where we need to be. And that can take many different shapes and forms, no matter what. But I think individually, we have certain needs and we have a hard time expressing them when a loved one dies. The hardest thing that I do as a funeral director is sit at a table with a family that their loved one has instructed them to do nothing. And we all hear people say that when we're alive. Oh, when I'm dead, just throw me in a ditch or throw me in with the dogs. And I think we're showing our fearlessness or carelessness about something that is a very serious situation. But we do the same thing with birthdays. I did with my birthday last year. My wife's like, "What do you want to do?" "Oh, nothing. Don't you worry about me." Right?
Yeah.
We all kind of do that. So that happens in funerals and life and death too. And when I'm sitting with a family at the table and they've been instructed to do nothing, and I can see it on their faces, they want to scream out to the world and said, "Mom died. This sucks." And I want to tell everybody that. And they don't feel that they have the permission. And so we're carrying out orders from the grave, basically. That happens a lot. We're following the wishes of the deceased, and no matter what we do, we're not going to we're not going to do the dead any good or any harm by what we do. It's all for the living. We're the ones that got to live through it.
Yeah. And I get that. I often think when people don't make arrangements when they die, there's almost that denial that they're going to die when death's really our only certainty in life. Because my husband used to be like that. It's like, oh, do what you want, love. It's like, seriously, I'm going to be grieving? Give us a clue. Whereas I, having worked in nursing for many years and dealt with a lot of death, I'm like, this is the song I want. This is the poem I want. And don't you dare burn me.
Right. I think that's good. I think that's good to have that conversation. That's what we recommend, through our podcast, through what we do in our communities. We're encouraging conversation, whether it's, organized ahead of time and paid for it at a funeral home is not necessarily the main importance. It's the conversation is what's important, we think.
Yeah. So I'm on a mission, Brian, to get the world just to say the word death, because they always say loss and, just gone next door. And I'm like, just say dead. Just say it. Come on.
I love they've just gone next door. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How scared are you going to go? You're going to go and put the kettle on. You're like, oh, best not, Uncle Terry might be in there. Just say that they're dead or they're deceased. But people don't like the word, do they?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And even me as a funeral director, I kind of forced myself to use that word as a funeral director. One of my jobs is to help families compose an obituary. So they'll provide me the information and I'll be the poet. And I forced myself to use the word died. They died. And not necessarily half the time, but a good share of the time, families will change that. Can we, in the euphemisms or whatever they are, passed away, passed on, went to be with the Lord, went next door. I love that.
Maybe it's just a Shelley thing, Brian. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think so? Probably not. But they do it. Like when you have kids and they say, well, they said they've gone next door or they're just asleep. I mean, I can sleep really well, but seriously, if they've gone for 18 years, you need to start coming up with a new excuse.
Oh, right. That is the huge one. I think most people should know it. They're not sleeping. They are dead. And, we've been very truthful with our daughter. My wife lost her grandmother a few years ago. And even my 3-year-old daughter, 2.5, 3-year-old at the time, was a part of the process. She was there to, see grandmother one last time. She was actually there for my wife came over to paint her nails and do her hair. And my little 2-3-year-old was around the whole time. And, she was there while we put her in her casket, which my daughter said, that's a beautiful cabinet. But why are we putting her in the cabinet? Yeah, that was one thing we've always avoided. And I was just talking with a funeral director friend the other day, and we were talking with their kids and our kids, and he had lost a grandmother, and we were quizzing the kids on what they remember. And even his kid said, oh yeah, she just went to sleep. And I could just see them cringe, parents cringe. Who told her that? And they're kind of looking around. Yeah.
It doesn't help, does it, really?
No. I mean, well, it's going to terrify your children. I don't want to go to sleep. You'll never see me again, right?
It's bedtime. They're going to be like, hell no.
Bedtime. Keep that casket away, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine, especially when they're younger and they have the little wicker baskets next to them as a baby? They're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Oh yeah. So that's I think one that not just funeral directors but all kind of professionals have preached over the years. Don't say sleeping.
Yeah. Or next door. Don't say next door.
Or next door. Well, for me, grandmother was next door because I lived next door to the funeral home. And so, my daughter was like, where's grandma? Well, she's next door right now, but she's not going to be there in a day or two. So
maybe I had a premonition all those years ago, and that's why I say it. I don't know. Oh, bless you. So obviously you had a positive change because a vicar said to you about seeking counselling and having this preventative measure, like a talking therapy. So what other important message you have around, when people are trying to make positive change, particularly after times of loss, death?
Well, I think just as general human beings, we have a hard time saying that it's okay to focus on ourselves for a minute. We're always too busy with something else, whether it's family or work or something. We're focusing on things for other people, and we don't take a lot of good time to consider ourselves and what's going on in our lives, how we're affecting ourselves positively or negatively, and really doing that personal work to, I suppose, if you want change, you need to, I think you need to look at that. Otherwise, if you're not analyzing, this is something we even talk about in our daily lives in funeral service. There's like 3 tenets that I've come up with, that we've got to talk about it, we've got to think about it, and um, and then the third one just left. So apparently I don't think about it enough. Um, but mainly those 2 things, thinking about what's going on and then talking about it, and then it's that personal introspection that I don't think we do often enough outside of our daily lives, when we really want to focus on ourselves and give ourselves permission to say, okay, maybe I'm not okay, or maybe I am, and how can we move forward, and encouraging people to tell your story to others too. I mean, we don't have to be on an island. We could use our friends. That's what they're for. They want to help us. Um, Sometimes we just have to open up and tell our story.
Yeah, I love that. I wrote in my book, but I still go on about it now, and I always call it mess to message. When you get to that stage in your life when you turn your mess into a message to help someone else, because because you move forward, even if you're not dealing with it, your life is still changing and moving forward. And when you get to that point where you can talk of your story and help someone else know, that life goes on, it's just a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always described grief as kind of like a backpack that when you lose somebody, you're going to wear this backpack. You're putting it on no matter what, metaphorically, and you can never take it off. So at first, it's going to seem exceptionally heavy, like you're hauling a heck of a pack, and then some moments will pass where you don't even notice that it's there. But I think for the remainder of your life, it's always on. The heaviness will come and go over time, and I think there's things that we can do to lighten the load a little bit. And well, being around people and sharing and opening up can absolutely lighten the load.
Do you see people who are like the opposite of that, where they've almost like nursed someone for many, many years, or they've been in an abusive relationship, and when somebody dies, they have like a sense of relief and a new beginning, a rebirth? Do you see that side at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There, sometimes death brings a lot of relief, and folks can feel guilty about it as well, to where if they're the main caregiver, and really their purposes in life is just making their loved one comfortable, and that situation can carry on for years. And when they do die, there's a sense of relief there. The family can finally go and exhale a little bit, and sometimes they feel a little bit, they regret that they feel that way, but that's some natural feelings that come out. Yeah, I see that from time to time.
Yeah, there's some great work, some research by, I think it's Dr. Bonanno, and he speaks about this other side of sadness, is his book. And it's really interesting. So it's for people that have been married for many years, it's people that have been carers, people that have had like an absent father and things like that. But then, then the average grief where you're together and your husband dies kind of thing. And he takes a whole new look on it about how actually it's like a spiritual enlightenment. There's a joy, there's a relief, and it's kind of undiscussed, a bit like death itself, actually. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
undiscussed, but he's saying that actually grief can be quicker than what we've been told in the past. And that's what's his belief. I think he's probably had a bit of a hard time saying it, but
Yeah.
I find it fascinating.
Well, I think the human race kind of got bungled up on Elisabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, when I don't even think that was her original intention, was to really ingrain that into us, that we're going to walk through these individual steps in maybe this specific order, or even if you mix the order up, it's more of it's even more confusing than that. That you've got those basic 5, add probably 20 more different ways you can grieve, mix them all up in a bag and randomly pull them out, and that could be how you feel today.
I think that's a lot better. See, I had to study her work as part of my nursing degree. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is quite simple. 5 things, plonkety plonk, let me go meet Mr. Smith next door, one of my patients. And it's not, because I think her book was actually based on, she worked with terminally ill people, so people who
Mm-hmm.
were dying. And it was actually the grief, their experience of the loss of their imminent life, their ending was coming. but everyone sort of took it on and this is what grief's going to look like. And it doesn't. I mean, I qualified nearly 20 years ago in nursing, and we was told there's like 3 types of grief. It's either normal, it's absent, or it's delayed. So either you're crying, you're not, or you will do in the end.
Oh, right.
And there was like, so Shelley, when you're out nursing, they're going to tick one of these 3 boxes. They'll either be here now, later in life, or not at all. But if we look at it now, it's like 17 different types of grief, like the anticipatory one you said earlier, where people like living for longer, aren't they? So then it's almost like a slow death where we're sort of doing medical advancements and the interventions. And there's so many griefs around now. I mean, does that make your job harder?
It can. The thing that really makes my job difficult is when communication breaks down, and some folks will get in a set of grief to where they can't explain themselves, they can't explain their wants, their needs, or they don't feel that they have permission to. And that's one of my big jobs as a funeral director, is to let folks know you've got permission to do what you need to do. And chances are you're going to think it's crazy when the rest of us go, probably not that crazy. But that's just how you feel at that point in time. And there's that, I guess I can kind of call it the death fog of the first few days, to where you feel lighter than air. Your thoughts come in and out, and just holding normal conversation is difficult. And I'm meeting with those folks right away. And that's one of the first things I do when I meet someone who's lost a loved one. I tell them, listen, I know you're probably feeling rushed right now, and most people are. They feel like they've got to do things quickly.
Yeah.
And my first thing is to calm the situation down. Everyone take a deep breath. I want you to know that there's no hurry from me. Okay.
That's beautiful.
If you got to take time, let's take time. And I'm going to show you ways that we can take time. Okay. And if I can lower that stress level instantly, then it kind of puts them on a little more solid ground to talk about what they want to do.
That's really beautiful. Because
Well,
it's like really hurried. I know, like when my grandparents died, and it was just sort of like, well, we've got to quickly get in there. Where's a favourite outfit? Invite people. Got to get this date, and can't do it on a Thursday because that's market day. Traffic will be horrendous, and everything's diddle-a-diddle-a-diddle. And you're like, oh my goodness, because realistically, they're not really going anywhere, are they? And it's just us. I think, it's more us with our logical living brain thinking, right, we need to do this.
Got to do it now. Yeah. And I think, because folks don't discuss even their death stories of like, okay, this is what happened when my mom died, this is the process. We don't really talk about that much, just in general. So when this happens to someone, they have these beliefs that they pick up from Hollywood and from what their cousin told them. And some of them are just outlandish. It's just, I don't want to say it's crazy, but it's not something that's normal in my world. But they're thinking, we've got to get this body to the crematory or to the grave right away, or we're going to have problems. We've got to make arrangements instantly, or who knows. There's all kind of different things that people focus on and kind of distract them from taking that breath and saying, okay, they're dead, now what?
Yeah, I'm just wondering as we talk it out aloud, because you get like this grief brain or the death fog, as you said, and it's almost like when you don't know what to do with your life because part of your life has stopped, maybe it's having a purpose. Maybe that's why they get so into the funeral, do you know what I mean? Because then you've got a purpose and you've got a duty and you've got something to do. Maybe that's why we always feel so hurried.
And I think people naturally want something to do. They want a task to do, to check a box. And I think that kind of keeps them from dwelling on the real raw emotion of, hey, your loved one's dead. And I think that's just kind of human nature. We move from task to task to task to kind of keep progress moving forward. And that's one of the things that I'll talk to my families about. I'll say, okay, watch, we have, using the example of like older parents and one of them is dead. I'll tell the kids, I'm like, watch mom after the funeral. Because right now she's got stuff to do. She's got friends to call, hair to do, dress to lay out, and a funeral to attend. Once that's over and she goes home and then everyone leaves and they're home alone, that's the saddest time of a funeral, I think. Everyone's gone and your loved one's gone. And then you sit there and you go, now what? Who am I? What am I doing now?
Yeah, and it is the hard part. I'm currently, my second book is about grief. It's about the grief recovery, and I've set up a death cafe. I quite like death, you see, Brian.
Excellent.
And so I talk really openly, but it is exactly what you're saying. It's just how other people deal with it, and it's just, you know, my branding on Facebook is like Shelley F night, life goes on, and I know that's often the hardest part. I know that, I don't say it lightly, but it is to encourage people. You know, when you do have that silence, just try and sit with it.
Yeah.
Don't always fill that gap, that void. You know, just think, why does it feel the way it feels?
Yeah. There's something to be said for silence. You don't have to always fill it with noise.
Yeah. I think some, you know, stuff just comes up. Maybe you don't want stuff to come up. Maybe that's why we're always doing and not being.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
So you seem to speak so beautifully to your families, the family that are left behind. Do you have like positive affirmations that you use for yourself or with the grieving?
You know, one of the things that I really try to convey to my folks is because I've seen a lot of blogs recently about what people say to folks at funerals and how upset that can make people. There's a lot of things people say, and they make a lot of them I hear make me cringe too. They're in a better place. Yeah, really? That place is the casket or the grave. Is it really better? Or they're um, you know it was God's will. There's all these things that can be said that can be really upsetting to folks.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I say to help folks turn it into a positive, take a possible negative and turn it into a positive, is look at this from this standpoint, is what I tell my folks. Folks are going to come up to you and they're going to say something that know that they feel very awkward and they're very careful with what they say, and they're going to say something that they relate to, and it may not be the best thing for you, but no matter what they say, if you just translate it into I care about you, if you hear everyone say that, no matter what they say, I'm caring about you, I think it's going to be a more positive experience, because bottom line, they do care about you, because first off, they showed up, which is the best thing that we can do to anyone whose family member has died. Show up, give them a hug. Not right now, 6 feet distance, but um, um, but in saying something, and even if you don't say the right thing, you showed up and you took the time where the rest of your community is, you know, having a cookout or playing Xbox. They didn't take the time to show up. Well, your friends did. They may not have said the right thing, but they showed up because they cared. And I've had families go, I can't believe, I never thought of it that way. Because they've all heard the things that people say, and
Yeah.
it makes them cringe too. But that will that that's just a whole positive thing for me, is just being able to break down the situation and look at, they're here because they care, and they really care about you. They love you, and even if they say something stupid, they still care. Bottom line.
Oh, Brian, I could speak to you all day. I just, you know, like, I just love talking about death and grief. But the fact we have this humour as well, I could just speak to you for, well, days probably. I've absolutely loved connecting with you.
Oh yeah, thanks so much for talking with me.
Bless you. So how can people reach out to you? Because they probably all going to come to you.
Oh yeah.
So you've got your podcast.
Yeah, you guys can check us out. We're called Undertaking the Podcast, and you can check us out wherever you get your podcasts. But you can email us at info@undertakingthepodcast.com, and we just do this. We sit down, we talk to folks. There's no script. We love sharing stories, and at first our podcast is a little funeral service, funeral director life heavy, but we don't have any rules for ourselves. We want to hear all kinds of things. So we've been bringing in folks that are telling us stories of their loved one's death and how that affected them in the process. And I think our goal is not necessarily our goal, but our core belief is that we can learn one thing from every human being. And it may be positive or negative, but we can learn one thing, and we're trying to find those.
That's fabulous. And are you on social media as well, like Facebook?
Yep, you can check us out on Facebook at Undertaking the Podcast, or on Twitter at Undertaking PC, and on Instagram at the same Undertaking PC, and LinkedIn as well. Yeah, that's where most folks get in touch with us, is sending us a message on social media.
Brian, as I said, I've absolutely loved this. I could speak to you for hours, and just thank you for your time. Keep doing what you're doing. I've absolutely loved this.
Thanks so much, Shelley. It was a pleasure talking to you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you subscribe and leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, you can buy Positive Changes, a self-kick book from all online book retailers or from shelleyfknight.com. If you need a dollop of positivity until the next episode, come like and follow us over on Facebook at Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. As always, I've been Shelley F. Knight and you've been amazing.